everyone, and welcome back to my channel True Crime and Trials, where I discuss true crime and trials. My name's Lindsay and we are still cracking on with the Durst trial, and I have the next two witnesses, and the first one is Peter Wilke, and he is a retired surgeon. He worked at a hospital that was attached to the medical school that Kathy went to, and he did teach medical students at the time. He remembers Kathy as she was one of his students, and he says Kathy was completely different in many ways compared to his other students. She was older, so she was a bit more mature, she was beautiful, she was poised, and he says she was also something he had never seen in anyone before or since, but he also says she was terrified. Peter once had a meeting with her, and he remembers it because he had never spoke to a person in that kind of emotional state before. And he's even thought, even though it was so long ago, he's probably thought about this meeting 1,000 times because it was such an emotional time for her, and because he is aware of what subsequently happened to her afterwards. And he's wondered over the years that, you know, if he could have or should have done more to protect her, because she had told him that she thought she was in danger and that her husband might kill her, and he can't imagine what the amount of grief that her family and friends have been through since then. So on to the meeting he had with her, and the reason he had a meeting with her was that she wasn't doing well in her clerkship and she was missing a lot of it. Peter also remembers that while Kathy was telling him what was going on, she was shaking and she was traumatised. She also told him that she was going through a divorce. Kathy also told him that she wanted to go further with learning surgery, but she couldn't because of all that was going on. There was violence, court proceedings, lawyers and therapists, and Kathy told him that it was her husband that was causing it all, and told Peter that there was a homicidal side to Bob. Kathy told him about one particular event which she had been with a friend, that her husband had come in and he was in a foul mood, and he attacked the friend and he knocked him to the ground and was kicking him and stepping on his head. Honestly, that does not surprise me where Bob's concerned. Kathy was obviously traumatised by it, and she told him that she was sure that if she hadn't interfered, he would have killed that person. She threw herself on him and he was hitting her as well as her friend until he stopped. Peter told her that the surgical clerkship was unimportant and she was doing fine, and that the only thing that was important is that she stayed safe. Kathy told him that she would make up the work, which she did, and she passed. He told her she would make a damn fine doctor. Kathy also told him that Bob had cut off her tuition and it was a problem for her. Eventually, Peter is asked if a student wasn't going to be in, who would they call? Peter says that they would call where they were going to be based. And again, he can't imagine someone calling the dean to say they were ill with cramps and diarrhea. He says the last person they would call would be the dean, especially if they didn't want to get into any trouble. So the cross-examination. So Peter had calls with Mr. Lewin back in 2016, and he says he didn't know they were recorded. And Peter has followed the case since that phone call up until now. Now on to the drug questions. And he's asked about the fact that the well-to-do were pretty involved in the cocaine scene. And he says he knew that some people took cocaine. And then the defence asked him if Kathy told him that her and her friend, the night that Bob showed up and started fighting her friend, were doing cocaine, which she obviously hadn't told him about that. So the redirect. Peter is asked if he had had the experience to be able to determine if Kathy was experiencing symptoms of being under the influence of cocaine versus something else, and he says he guesses so, because she seemed to be influenced by what she was saying and her emotional state rather than by any surge-induced shaking. But he doesn't know what cocaine does to someone, so he had no idea. It seemed to him that it was all pure fear, pure emotion and pure terror. So there we go. That was a video interview. So next we have Dr. Leslie Hinn, and on the 6th of January 1982, she was a resident in emergency medicine. On that day, she treated Kathy. Now, they show part of a form that was initially filled in that day for Kathy, and it shows Kathy's name and address, etc. And the reason Kathy went to the emergency room was that she had been hit on the left side of the face and was complaining of pressure in the left eye for the past 5 hours. So Leslie examined Kathy, and Kathy told her she had been slapped. Leslie noted that there was bruising and mild swelling around the eye. In other words, Kathy had a black eye. Kathy had noted her next of kin wasn't Bob, it was actually her mother, Anne. Bearing in mind this was back in 1982, so that's another sign of things not being good between Bob and Kathy. In Leslie's experience, Kathy's injury would have been caused as a result of domestic violence. Kathy didn't tell Leslie that she was a medical student, and had she done so, Leslie would have had to note it and pass it on to Kathy's school. So the cross-examination, Leslie has never met Bob, and she has never watched or read anything about this case. So DeGuerin is desperately trying to discredit Leslie's experience, but it isn't working. He's having none of it. He's trying to make out that at the time she was inexperienced, when she just throws it back in his face that she's had 8 years of experience working in that emergency room. So just a quick query on the examination notes that Leslie had made back then, and Leslie had put it was mild swelling. It was still a black eye. So the redirect, Leslie says that it would have had to have been a hard slap to cause the black eye Kathy had. It was more than just a simple slap. So again, you know, despite Kathy not wanting to make a big thing about this black eye, plenty of people saw it. She actually went to the hospital. So, you know, it's there, it's noted, it's documented. So there we go. I will be back with more in the next video. So until then, bye for now.